everybody, and welcome to yet another show of the CXO show. And today I have with me my friend Yogesh Dimri. Hi, Yogesh. How are you doing?
Good, Swapnil. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm glad that you're here today. We're recording this show on a Friday afternoon. And like I say, this is the favorite part of my week where I get to talk with some of India's most successful professionals who run India's economy in some way. And I'm always happy to talk with people I know from earlier. Yogesh is somebody that I've met and interacted with, and I can tell you that he's have a lot of valuable things to share today with us. As usual, before I get started, I do a quick introduction of my guests. So, Yogesh, I'm going to formally read your introduction. My team has asked me to keep it short, so I'm going to keep it slightly short. But Yogesh is the head of learning and development at Pathkind Labs. He's a seasoned leader with over 26 years of experience across business development and L&D. If I'm not mistaken, you spent close to 10 odd years in business development, and then you moved the balance 16 probably were in the learning and development teams. With a BSc degree from Lucknow University, Yogesh has been associated with the healthcare industry for the entirety of his career of 26 years with different organizations such as Merck and Pfizer prior to joining Pathkind. At Patkind, he looks after all kind of training and learning initiatives and has been instrumental in developing and implementing innovative L&D strategies across the company, right? Patkind is what Mankind and Patkind both are our customers. So when I read this out and I say that they do some very innovative learning and development work, I can vouch for that because I know how seriously these companies take their learning and development, and they always bring innovation in it for sure, right? They're not looking at run of the mill stuff to be done. They're looking at really impacting the industry and the people within their organization in a serious way, in a way that helps their company, in the way that helps the healthcare sector, and in a way that it helps the nation at large. So that's been, I think, the thought process of the Mankind and the Patkind group, which I absolutely love and respect. And that's the reason why we have Yogesh on the show today.
Thanks, Swapnil, for that
Okay.
brief and nice introduction.
Yes, thank you. Yogesh, first question to you,
Yeah.
right? It's not really a question. First, before anything, I just want you to run our audience through a little bit of your background, right? What got you into learning and development, right? Tell us where you started, which was your last bit of education that you did, and tell us your journey from there on as to how you landed to be head of L&D at Pathkind Labs.
Okay. So, Swapnil, my last bit of education was, as you rightly mentioned in the introduction, I am a BSc graduate from
Yeah.
Lucknow University. So,
Mm,
my birth, entire upbringing had been at
mm,
Lucknow, right?
mm,
That this inclination towards L&D, it came into forefront when I was with Pfizer, and I
mm,
got elevated as a in a managerial role. So
mm,
the instance was like, I had couple of my peer group also who were in this interview. They were along with me, and uh, to be on the luckier side, I was the one who qualified. Unfortunately, they could not.
mm.
To add to it, when I became a manager, they were in my team. Like
Got it.
we were all team members, and really, when I interacted with them closely, I worked with them. There, I got some feelers. Why it was me and not them.
Mm,
So in a way, since we were already colleagues, so there was a lot of rapport between us. I
mm,
put it very straight to them. I said, see, these are some things that if you can come up, I think you
mm.
can be there in the next round, to be a manager.
Got it.
And by God's grace, and their hard work, it worked that way.
Mm, mm,
So then, although I was in sales after I became a manager, I was there for around 4.5 years in
mm,
the sales role. But then slowly, the mind was, getting diverted towards L&D role, because the kick started coming from there.
mm.
And after that, in Pfizer, they sponsored me to a executive program from one of these business schools. So there, when I studied all about motivation, behavior, and all that, it was like a magnet. I said, no, this is
Mm,
my piece where I want to be. So I said,
amazing.
sales is not bad, but I have done it. Let me produce more, maybe successful, if I may call that, more successful sales professional as I could in my career, right? So that was it.
Amazing. What an interesting journey. And I'll tell you why it's interesting. And I have a couple of follow-up questions right there.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
I find it so interesting how people find their passions in life, right? Because very often, a lot of people think that they need to be clear about what their passions are right in college, sometimes school, right? And
Mm,
there's so much of
mm,
pressure on young children to find their passions
correct.
or what their natural interests are, right? You found your natural interest towards, you gravitated towards this thing in a way that
Correct, correct.
you couldn't help yourself but to do it, right? That's, I think, a great definition of what a true passion is. And it's so interesting that you found it probably 10 years into a career that you chose, right? And I think that's a great, I think, lesson for anybody that's listening to this for sure, right? Don't be in such a hurry to find your passion. Sometimes your
Yeah,
passion
yeah,
will come and find you
absolutely.
um, in some way, right? The second thing that I think, which I have seen and I've said multiple times on this show, I think what makes actually in the corporate learning business somebody a very effective learning and development guy is somebody that has business experience and then comes into learning and development, right? Because he can really step into the shoes of the people that he's training. Anybody that just jumps directly from, say, college into a learning and development role, I often see a gap there between their understanding of the people that they're training, right? So, do you have any comment on that, on the importance of being in business before you get into L&D?
Yeah, Swapnil, in a way that's important, and that really adds weightage to your overall persona, if I can say that. Because
Correct.
when you are in business, you know the nuances of business. If I
Mm,
could put it more in a more simple language, you know the nuts and bolts that matter
mm,
in a
mm,
successful business performance, right? So
correct.
that's a great advantage, because
Mm,
when you go with this knowledge to your trainees, or even to your stakeholders, right,
yeah.
you add a lot of value there. And
Mm,
that has been my way. I ensure that in a month I plan my trainings or my interventions in such a way that at least 25 to 30% I spent on the shop floor.
very
because
nice.
because the ways of business have changed in the last 26 years that I
Yeah.
have been in a business role, right? So
Yeah.
if I am not tuned to them, if I don't understand them, then my training becomes more of theoretical.
Very nice.
People will not accept it in a long term. And
Mm,
if you know the language of the business, what matters, your weightage on the table of business people increases. So that's a way
mm,
where you can show your presence, that I am important. Many a times, I hear this from my fellow colleagues, that the business people really don't value L&D. They,
mm,
whatsoever you do for them, they don't value. Many a times,
mm,
maybe the structuring has to be done at our end. We don't speak
mm,
the language that they understand or that they value.
mm,
And
mm.
added to that, you need to spend time there in the field.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's such, you already shared such amazing insights in this short time, right? If you do that 25-30% of your time on the field, that's exactly every learning and development person internal in a company must do, right? Because you're right, so much has changed in the business landscape. And in today's, Yogesh, I'm sure you'd agree, the rate of change in today's world is just so high, right? Whether it's technology, whether it's just about anything. So if you're not right there at the forefront of what's happening, it's very difficult for you to educate your people in corporate
Yeah,
learning,
yeah,
right?
sure. Yeah.
I think that's amazing insight from you. Yogesh, tell me, you spoke about certain feelers that you had in terms of why two or three of your colleagues didn't get through to that round in that company and you got through. I'm trying to think what were those two or three things which you identified as needs, for people to succeed professionally.
Yeah, so some of them are like, when you are facing an interview panel,
Mm,
I would start with the softer side or the behavioral side.
mm,
How do you present yourself? I think that's very important. Your
mm.
knowledge, everything comes afterward. First is
Yeah.
your presentation. So I think I was lucky enough to have my coaches or my trainers, who
Mm,
really tuned me to those nuances also.
got it.
So the way you present yourself, your body language, how you sit, whether you sit with crossed legs or whether you sit with your, or the way you sit, the way you smile,
Mm,
because everybody is there to see the best of you. So
yeah.
why not present it? So one is that, the
Mm,
behavioral aspects, they are really important.
mm,
The second one is, when you are the communication part of it, how
mm.
strongly do you present, and
Got it.
do you have examples? Because when you are in an interview panel, the people are interested in not what you did, how you did it, how you brought
Got it.
about that change, right? So do you have one, two, three, maybe if the time is there, four examples, because that
Mm,
convinces them that you, okay, this is not tailor made, this is
mm.
really done in the field, right? So
Got it.
I think that was how I was trained. And to people, who are young, who are still on the facing those interviews or planning, I think these two things are very important. And still,
Got it.
when I am on the other side of the table now after 26 years, I do take these two things quite positively, how you are presenting yourself, and
Got it.
whether that meat is there in you or not, or is it just instantly cooked Maggie.
Yeah, ha, ha. That's a very, very good way of putting it. Yogesh, what I find interesting, I'm assuming that this incident that you talk about where you were interviewing and trying to go is at least, by my rough calculations, 18 years old, right? Because you've been in L&D for 16 years, and this would have been
Yeah.
2 years, 2 or 3 years before that is when you would have made this transition. So it's 17 odd years for 18 for this incident to have happened. Is that a good
Around
calculation?
around around 20, around 20,
20, right? So I'm
20.
not that off from my
Mm,
calculation, right?
yeah, yeah,
18 to
yeah,
20 years. And what I find interesting is 20 years back when you went for an interview, communicating and presenting yourself impactfully was important. Today, when you go for an interviewing, still communicating and presenting yourself is so important, right? And I'm sure 20 years down the line, it's so difficult to predict the future with emerging tech and AI today. But even 20 years down the line, I'm assuming if there are people and if there are interviews happening, I'm sure again presenting yourself and communicating effectively will be an important part of it, right? So if any young person is listening to this, I think the thing to take back, really, there are some skills that stand the test of time, right?
In
And
fact,
this is one of
Swapnil,
those skills that stands the test of time.
yeah. In fact, Swapnil,
Yeah.
I think the communication, how you present yourself, is becoming now more
Yeah.
important, because technical skills, you have lot many technological
Yeah.
tools today available to cover up.
Mm.
Not these,
Very
not
interesting. Yeah.
these,
Yeah.
right?
So in your opinion, the soft skills are getting more and more and more and more important as we go along.
Yeah, yeah. I
Understood.
feel so. At least I feel
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. This is a good segue for us to get into my next question. Yogesh, if there's a young person
Mhm,
entering the workforce,
mhm,
industry agnostic, department agnostic, right? Just a young person just graduating today and entering the
mhm.
workforce, or is just been in the workforce. What would be the
Mhm.
three skills that you say are really critical for him to have a great career?
I think to start with, one thing that he should have is, willingness to learn. At least
Correct.
I would see it from that perspective. He might be
Got
an
it.
average guy,
Hmm.
but the willingness to learn should be really high in your initial days, in your professional journey, because
Correct.
that really brings you in the limelight. That really helps you to showcase that you are the person who is there to be, with the organization. He's putting his heart and soul to
Hmm.
learn newer things, right?
mm,
So one is willingness to learn should be really high,
mm,
and that is how I see it. The second would be that, you should be able to, spend time in understanding things,
mm,
beyond the 6 o'clock, the office time, if I can
mm,
put it, right? So you can say burning the midnight lamp, that would really
mm,
hold good there,
mm.
because that is how you differentiate yourself from the rest of the lot,
Got it. Got
right?
it.
So why I put skill second, because first should be your willingness. That is what people
Mm,
see.
mm,
Skill can be honed up over a period of time, but
mm,
willingness should be high, from the very first day. The third and the last, which I think, you should always have a humor in yourself, because
mm,
there will be times when you will have it too tough to handle, right?
mm,
If you have a humorous approach, at least you will be able to
mm,
motivate yourself, or lighten up yourself, or
mm.
de-stress yourself. So I
Got
think
it.
these three things really work well.
Got it. Very interesting. I think, person after person, that has gotten to a good level in their career, like you have seen success in the field that you've chosen. When I ask them, this willingness to learn always comes up as a very, very important point, right? I honestly think that it's the most important, right? There's a very nice quote that says, "Wisdom is knowing how much you don't know." Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that just being wise and knowing that, listen, there's just so much for me to know, and therefore I must be willing to learn, is so important, right? I think that's a great point. The other point, which is sometimes today become slightly a matter of debate. I don't even know how this has become a matter of debate, but burning the midnight lamp or oil somehow has become a point of debate amongst people. And I was just sharing with somebody. This is, of
Mhm.
course, something that I learned myself from somewhere else, that to do smart work, you must first do hard work, right? Because the path to smart work comes from hard work. If you're
Hard
not
work.
willing to put in the extra hours, if you're not willing to put in the extra effort at your job, your speed of learning is not going to be as quick. You're not going to be as valuable to the company as somebody else is. And more often than not, I tell people, right, in the spirit of being fair to people, if two people are more or less doing the job in a similar way, and this particular person puts in the additional effort, takes additional responsibility, naturally that person is going to become more valuable than this person within a company, right? So a lot of times, and this is starting to become slightly controversial, of saying, hey, corporates are making people burn the midnight oil, and I'm like, no, 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 you need to do this more for yourself than anything else. I want to share one last thing with you, Yogesh,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
sure.
Just from my experience, my first job, for a year and a half of that particular job, Yogesh, I used to work from 9:30 in the morning to 1 o'clock at night, right? Those used to be my regular hours, if not 1 o'clock, like 12 o'clock, 11:30, 12, meaning that range, right? Putting a 12-hour day was like normal for us, right? It wasn't a big deal at all. But what that experience did for me is it grew my confidence so much, Yogesh, in my ability to get stuff done and to work hard, which is both things, right? I knew I could do it, right? So then the next 10 years, again, I had to work like so hard in my career, but that first few years really grew my confidence that I could do it, right? And that became such an important stuff to make progress in your career. So any young person listening to it, right? There is and still you can find a work life balance in spite of working hard. You can find a work life balance, and we'll talk about that subsequently someday, right? But I think that was an outstanding point by you, and I also agree with the humor point, Yogesh, right? Because I think corporate life and life in general can get tough sometimes. The
Yes,
best way to
yes.
deal with it, every time I've met you, you had a very nice smile on your face, right? So it's important to deal with it with a sense of
Yeah,
humor and a smile on your face. There's an old Chinese proverb that says, "A man without a smiling face must not open shop," right? Uh,
yeah.
so I
Right.
think that is
Well said.
so important to have a sense of humor and this smiling face. Amazing. Thank you. I think it's very insightful. Yogesh, what are the big changes that you're seeing in the learning and development landscape, right? And let me try to break this down for you in some way, right? So you had a 16-year career in learning and development. Let's break that into two phases, right? Let's take the first 8 years as phase one and these last years as the phase two. um, and if you have to tell us two or three big changes or trends that you've seen in corporate learning or L&D, I'd like to know about that.
See, so you beautifully put it, first 8 years and last 8 years. So
Mm.
in my initial days as a trainer, and I'm talking about 2008,
Mm.
there were times when we did not have these projectors,
Got it.
so so we used to put our content on a transparency sheet and put it on that overhead projector.
Yes,
So,
yes.
and today you have digital content which can be put across in a 2 minute small video clipping,
Yeah.
right? So I would say the most impactful change that has happened in the
Mm.
last 8 years or so is the digitization of resources that is taking place.
Got it. Yeah.
uh, I would like to give you a instance. In my times, and I'm talking about when I was a student, I'm talking about the 1990s. Sholay was the film which was quite
Mm.
talk of the town, and
Yeah.
I must have seen that film numerous number of times,
Mm.
and
Mm.
each time I could explore something. Never I got bored seeing it.
Mm.
Digital content is like that.
Mm.
Your trainees should never get bored out of it. It should be so
Mm.
attractive. This
Mm.
also helps the trainers put across things which are very complex, which cannot
Mm.
be clarified through words. If you can put it in pictures, in some digital, put some effects into it and bring that about. It's so helpful for those new young trainees to
Mm.
understand concepts.
Mm.
So I think the first and foremost thing that comes in my mind, which has really revolutionized training, is the digital things which are coming. Right?
Mm.
Definitely,
Mm.
organizations like you are working there a lot. I know that, right?
Mm.
But I think that's really, and it helps the trainer also.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, Lot of your time which used to go in preparing those content,
Mm.
at least you save that in some much more productive things. So
Yeah.
one I would say is that. Second, I think, is the transformation which has come from structured trainings to
Mm.
training for real time benefits.
Correct.
uh, I would say, we all are living in this VUCA word, that one acronym that I have heard time
Mm.
and again in business reviews, which is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. You
Yeah.
cannot have structured platforms to address the needs of the VUCA word, right?
Mm.
So, as I told you first, you should be present on the shop floor for at least quite a sizable time, so that you understand the complexities, you understand the ambiguities, and train for them. And
Got
if you
it.
can really bring about some change there,
Mm.
the business values you there. Then they
Got
say,
it.
no, no, don't sit there, come on our table, we
Very.
value your. So that's how you build your credibility and you bring your weightage on the table. Otherwise, what I have seen in the yesteryears, there was always a distance between the trainer and the
Got
business
it.
people. They will say, okay,
Got
we
it.
are here, we'll take your training, but
Mm.
when the training is
Mm.
done, we'll have our own group. You remain
Yeah.
in your own group, right?
Yeah.
So that is, I think, some changes which I have seen happening down there, right?
Very interesting. Very interesting. So I think you have struck upon two of the biggest kind of big massive changes, right? You spoke about digital content and that being a big thing in over the last 8 years or so, and I think you touched upon something which is even more important than that, which is the attractiveness. That's a nice way of putting it, right? Of that particular digital content, and I think we've shared some notes earlier on this thing, right? And one of the things that I
Yeah.
tell my customers is that people are used to consuming educational content on platforms like YouTube and Instagram and stuff like that, where you have so many of these education influencers doling out education in a very interesting, effective, sometimes short form, sometimes long form format, right? Our corporate learning is still stuck in 1947 sometimes, right? Which is, we have some L1, L2, L3, some boring course which is made. And I share with my customers, clients, colleagues, that your LMS platform, if it doesn't look like YouTube in some way, then you're not
Correct,
doing your
correct.
job right, no? Because it
Right.
needs to look like that. And education, if I'm not mistaken, is one of the top categories of things that people are searching and looking for on YouTube as well, right? So people want to get
Absolutely.
educated online as they do on these forums. We just need to make it, like the word that you use, attractive. I think that is the key word. I loved your other point on saying transformation from structure to real time benefits, right? And I think the focus on real time is very, very important in today's day and age, because the more, and comment on this, Yogesh, the more I think we enter the knowledge economy, as we have entered the knowledge economy, but the more knowledge based economy we become, both in India and globally, the more the need for learning and development, right, across
Correct,
companies. Because
correct.
irrespective of what colleges do, they're never going to be able to fill the knowledge gap that comes in after you join a company, because you need knowledge very specific to that particular company, which is constantly evolving as well, right?
Correct, correct.
So yeah, do you feel the importance of L&D going up as we become more a knowledge based economy?
Absolutely, absolutely. At least I can vouch for it in
Uh,
healthcare sector,
yeah.
right? Because you see, the way healthcare transformation is taking place.
Mm,
Technology is coming in a big way in healthcare.
mm,
You
mm,
take diagnostics,
mm,
you take how medicine is practiced,
yeah.
you take how hospital care is given. Everywhere you have technology coming in.
Yeah.
And let us understand that doctors are good in treating people,
Mm,
but the arms and ammunitions that they need to treat people,
mm,
they
mm,
come either from pharmaceuticals, or they come from diagnostics, or they come
mm,
from high end tools which they use for their surgical or other procedures, right?
mm,
You need very qualified, highly technical people to tell the doctor how this
mm,
would work, or which
mm,
how value this will add value to your
yeah.
work that you are doing.
Yeah.
So there, I totally agree with you.
Mm,
If you after I think after software or our
mm,
IT industry, healthcare is the biggest knowledge based industry, right?
so
So
interesting.
L&D really can do a lot of good,
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. You know what's, Yogesh, very interesting is the impact on the Indian economy that corporate learning has had, right? Because Infosys, since you mentioned IT, and which was followed
Mhm.
suit by TCS, Wipro, and all those
Right.
large, gigantic companies that came out of India, they literally had to set up colleges, literally had to set up
Mhm.
campuses
Right,
to
right.
train people to come up to skill on the kind of stuff that they required to serve the global market, right? And that was actually a big inflection point in the Indian economy and how things happened. This IT services, ITES, us taking our IT to the world was a huge inflection point in India's economy, right? So much of credit needs to go to those pioneers of learning and
Yes,
development that
yes.
actually set up these campuses and paved the way for learning and development across different companies, right? And often I feel that my brothers and sisters in learning and development, people like you, don't take enough pride in the fantastic work that we all do in skilling Indians, right? To ensure that they're employable and that they, are productive, effective members of society. And so much of that happens from corporate learning and L&D, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we should thump our chest a lot more about that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because often, people complain about the the traditional ways of education, which is college, not making students job ready. So the often what makes them job ready is the corporate learning that we do with them, right? That is what makes them job ready. That's what helps them build careers. And I especially know
Very
after
true.
interacting with you and the other members of your management about the big role that you all need to play in literally shaping a person's career with the training that you give them, right? Creating talent for this particular healthcare industry.
Healthcare, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, what keeps you up at night, Yogesh, as an L&D professional? And I want to ask you this question slightly in a broader way, right? I don't mean to address your company in specific as to what the
Mhm.
challenges are, but just overall as an L&D professional today, what keeps an L&D professional up at night largely? What are the things that worry you? What are the big challenges of your job?
See, as I said, things have changed. So have
Yeah.
your trainees changed. You know,
Ah,
uh,
okay. Yeah.
today's trainees are not the trainees which say in my age they were, right. Say
Correct.
25, 30 years back they were, right. They want
Mm.
everything instant, and
Mm.
their tool of calibration is monetary gains. Right.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I'm saying at least for majority of them, right.
Yeah.
That really at times puts a pressure on your
Yeah.
attrition rates,
Yeah.
and that really then again you have to, the more the attrition, the more the
Yeah.
number of trainings.
Yeah.
Correct. So one is that worry, and I think not me, but across the corporate world, if you see, attrition is a challenge.
Mm.
If you talk to HR guys, or maybe L&D guys,
Got it.
that is one thing that second would be how to make it, as I told you, that you have to be ready to address the real time
Got
challenges.
it. Yeah.
You cannot rely on textbooks of last year to address
Got it.
the curriculum of today.
Got
So
it.
one is real time challenges.
Got it.
uh,
Got it.
so one is you get those challenges from your stakeholders, but how
Mm-hmm.
do you convert it into a training
Mm.
program, right, or
Mm.
a
Mm.
learning? That's
Yeah.
another one, because as the business scenario is changing,
Mm.
the learning needs are also changing, and the
Mm.
complexity is also changing, right.
Got
So
it.
if I can just put two of them, right.
Got it. I think I agree with both of them, right? I think as a learning and development or a broader HR professional, um, the attrition is definitely an issue that we face across all segments. And therefore, what can we do to really help with that? And of course, I think the real time changes and how do we really as an L&D professional adapt and bridge that gap very very quickly between what business wants
Mm.
to make business more productive and how do you bring that to them ASAP? I think that's always a challenge
Yeah.
which we will face. Yogesh, what do you love about your job? What's the best part about being a learning and development head?
So I think, Swapnil, I would still, I think before I talk about my position, I would say I'm a trainer, right?
Got
I'm
it.
a L&D professional, right?
Yeah.
That's my basic introduction.
Got it.
And a trainer would always be happy when he sees his trainees doing well. So
Mm,
if I can just give you an example, when we started the Pathkind, it was a conscious decision of the management. We won't be going in for those 90%. We would
mm,
look at the 33% and make them job ready, make them true
mm.
professionals, right.
Amazing.
So we took rookies who were just graduates, and that too not from a very they came from very humble backgrounds.
Mm,
Today when I see them being thorough professionals, rising
mm,
up their career, whether in
mm,
monetary levels or whether in in their positions,
mm,
their entire lifestyle, the lifestyle of they share that the entire lifestyle of their family has changed,
Mm, mm,
that really gives you a lot of satisfaction. And
yeah,
I tell them on an open forum, 99% of this success belongs to you, but I will be
yeah.
selfish enough to take that 1%. So
That's such an amazing thing to share. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
right, so I think the biggest satisfaction comes from there. And
yeah,
I think like healthcare is a service. In healthcare, I think when I see these guys in particular, I don't take it less than any service, because they
yeah,
came from very humble backgrounds.
yeah,
Many of them were in the unorganized sectors, and today
yeah,
you find them, on their path to
yeah.
professionals and up there, right?
Mm. Yogesh, having been, not let me not say having been, since I'm a teacher trainer myself, although I
Uh-huh.
haven't done much of it for a long time, but
Mhm.
I can add a big smile on my face because I was resonating with everything that you're saying, right? When a single learner that you've touched has something nice to share about how that particular training or that thought changed their life in a meaningful way, and you actually see that, there's no bigger joy than that,
Absolutely.
right? And that's what I always used to keep in mind every time you had a, say, a batch of people that didn't seem to committed to the process of learning, and I even if I saw like two or three faces there that were
Mhm.
attentive, that was enough for me, right? I didn't
Correct.
care really about the rest that had other priorities or weren't
Mhm.
interested. For me, what was important
Yeah.
is those, two or three people that have committed
Absolutely. Absolutely.
themselves to the process of change. There's this lovely thought that says a person's mind, um, uh, what is it? A person mind impacted by a new idea never goes back to its original dimension, right? So
Correct.
sometimes just one idea is enough to impact you, and the entire way in which you go about thinking is totally different after that, right? And both you and me have often seen that, right? That you share a single thing, you see the light bulb in a way going on in a person's eyes
Correct.
and head, and you know for a fact that you have in a way help that person along a certain trajectory and path in life that will be so good for them, right? So yeah, I think that is definitely the most enjoyable part of being in learning and development, no? Now, so Yogesh, what are your leadership mantras, right? Based on your vast experience of training people and leading teams yourself, right? Both these experiences put together, what would you say are two or three things that leaders should do to get the best out of their team members?
Uh, so I have always appreciated and respected a gentleman by the name of Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. He was our
Yeah,
president also, right?
yeah.
I remember in particular one of his speeches, and that has been put into several video formats also, where he says that when there is a failure,
Mm,
his boss, who was
mm,
Professor Satish Dhawan, he went to
mm,
address the conference, the press
mm,
conference. And when it was a win, he sent me to address it.
mm,
So I
mm,
think I cannot think of a beautiful example, a more beautiful example regarding leadership than
mm,
that example, or maybe I got attached to that example so much that I always practice it. So you can say that my team members, I always tell them that these are the two banks of a river. Between these you can flow anywhere, right? So
mm,
one
mm,
of the qualities of a leader would be to delegate people things. Yeah,
mm,
tell them the boundaries, but do a lot of
mm,
delegation, and
mm,
delegation with the purpose of helping them grow,
mm,
helping them face the challenges or face the hardships much earlier in their profession, so that they learn and then
mm,
they move ahead, right? So
mm,
one of my mantras of leadership is that.
mm,
And if there is really a problem, then you face it,
mm,
then tell them, by exemplification, you tell them this is how it is done.
Got it.
So one is that I will take. Second is be approachable to your people.
Mm,
A leader who is not approachable to his people cannot be a leader,
mm,
because in difficult times your team looks up to you.
mm,
So I think the second one would be, you should be approachable.
mm,
And third is, take take lot of time to mix up with your team.
mm,
Right, you should always have times to enjoy.
mm,
Even if the event is a small one,
mm,
take time to enjoy with your people. That brings you closer, so that when there are hardships, when there are hard times, when there is a stress, when there is a little rise in tempers, they don't mind it the other way, because the base of it is really very strong, which you have built over the period, with these small celebrations. So I think these three mantras I do practice.
mm,
Delegate people from the very word go, but be near them,
mm,
be approachable, and third is celebrate things
mm.
as far as possible.
Lovely, Yogesh. Such lovely and well articulated thoughts. Right. Delegate. Number two, be approachable to your people. Number three, ensure that you take the time to interact, have
Celebrate,
fun.
have fun,
Be there with your people. And you also, I think, shared the importance of recognizing people when they do something well.
recognizing people.
Right. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
these 4 points are, they cover in a crisp way what a leader can do to do a good job and get the best out of their people. Yogesh, we're almost out of time, so I have a like final couple of questions. What's the big trend that you're seeing in the workforce post COVID? Is there any big trend which is there? That's my number one question, and I'll ask my other one after you answer that.
So by trend, can you just bit clarify it in terms of
Have you seen
trend?
any changes in the workforce, how people are working, what their expectations from the companies are, etc., after COVID as compared to
Oh,
pre-COVID?
okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely. I think, and I think that's also a avenue for the management or the HR leaders to be very flexible in their
Mm,
approach when they are
mm,
designing it, right? So in terms of the first one being that people are a bit tuned to the work from home culture,
mm,
and organizations also have realized that what will be the gap if they are allowed that.
mm, mm,
Correct. So I think that is one area that if a person can be given that liberty or that
mm.
flexibility from the organization side. uh, Unfortunately, we are a diagnostic lab, we run
Yeah.
24 into
Yeah.
7. So such flexibilities are not always possible, but
Yeah.
still we have tried to have it as and when possible.
Mm,
The second would be, as far as people are concerned, is they need moments to again enjoy within their workspace.
mm, mm,
Correct. It's not like a 9 to 6 job kind of a thing on your
mm,
seat.
mm,
What kind of you can say, what kind of avenues are you giving them between that to maybe have a
mm,
small get together, maybe
mm,
have a small something, so that that monotonity in their work that
mm,
breaks. So I
mm,
think those two things I can see being practiced post COVID. The
mm,
first one, definitely, I think the work from home culture and the flexibility in HR policies, that
mm.
is quite evident.
Got it, got it, got it, got it. Yogesh, thank you very, very much for giving us your time and being so insightful during this particular interaction. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And myself, I picked up a lot of interesting anecdotes, interesting points that resonated very well with me. And I think whoever's listening to this will have the same feeling after they do. Any final thoughts from your end?
No, I think, thank you so much, Swapnil. You helped me deep dive into my career of 26 years, although it's long years.
Yeah.
But it seems like it all started maybe yesterday or day before yesterday.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for helping me, revisit that.
Thank you. Thank you. And I hope to continue to interacting with you because our interactions for me are very, very enjoyable always. So, and I hope that we do some very, very, very innovative work together and really have an impact on the
Sure,
person, on
sure.
the healthcare industry, and on the country at large by the efforts that we take together in this field.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.